965 back again. We are, as you can see, back in the workshop for this one. Things are starting to quieten down a little bit, so we will be back out on those hills and mountains very shortly. With that in mind, I've been looking at heats, not so much heat sources, but ways of cooking and obviously boiling water whilst out and about. Now, as you know, I've got the gas stove. I've also got Hexi stove. But a lot of the places we go to, you can't really have a fire as such. So I've been looking at fireboxes, and they seem to be quite expensive. There's loads of different ones, from bigger ones, smaller ones, mini ones, nano ones I think they call them, but they're all quite expensive. So I've decided to make my own. Usually I'll do like a plan of what I'm going to do, which you can see I've got a sketchbook there with all my plans and materials list, but this time I've gone ahead and I've made a prototype firebox, as you can see there, and just to give me a good idea of scale, this one is based on a solo expedition, and what it's going to allow me to do is actually have a little contained fire as a heat source or for means of cooking and boiling water as such. So we get a bit of a closer look at it, and we get started on the project. Okay, so the basic idea is that it's an easy to put together box with changeable heights, so you can move your burner up and down, or you could move what you're cooking up and down. What I plan to do with this one is have a mesh that goes over the top. Gives me a bit of a bigger area for sticking pots on. When I take this with me, whilst this is a great bit of kit, this is an MSR pocket rocket, and obviously it goes on top of a gas bottle like this. It's all right, and I usually peg it down so that the can doesn't move, but it's quite a small area on the top of there, and it is a little bit unsteady for things like mess tins. You know, if you're going to put a mess tin on there, it's a bit unsteady. So the idea of the firebox is stability and multifunctional, really. As I say, it's got adjustable height, and I'm just going to use some welding rod for that. This is the small rod for the prototype, but I've actually got some thicker TIG welding rods that I'm going to use, and they go in various, I'll pick that up, they can go in various heights, all the way up and all the way down, so you can have, you know, any burner you want in there, and you can adjust the height accordingly depending on the height of the burner. So whether you're using something like a little pop can stove like that, which will just plonk inside there, great, or if you're using, say, a Trangia style burner, that will also fit straight in there, no problem. And when it comes to sticking your saucepan on the top, no problems at all. And even the cardboard one is pretty stable, to be honest, you know, and it gives a nice area for cooking with. Probably a bit noisy, but you get the point. It's more secure. And the plan is, or not that I intend to be whacking it like that, the plan is to put a peg in each corner, and that will actually hold it in position and keep it still. So it's a very simple design. It's basically slots together. So you've got 4 6-inch by 6-inch squares, and they're slotted halfway up, and likewise on the other end it's the same again. You've got slots halfway along, and then the other squares are simply slotted in the opposite plane, so when you come to slide them together, they go together and they're all nice and even. So as I say, that's just a cardboard template to give me an idea of size. What I also plan to do is, whilst this one is just a 6x6 size, what I'm going to do is I'm also going to do 2 sides that are 12x6, so that will give me enough room to put either 2 pots on, or I can be cooking with one and boiling water with the other, or if there's more than one of us, we can both use it at the same time. So that's the idea. The plan is to have it in a little pouch, so it folds down into a very small, compact section. Now there is another square that's going to form the base, so I can have a fire in there, and that is going to look something like that. So that'll drop in. Again, it's just a quick cardboard template. That'll drop in the bottom. You put your fire materials in, get your fire going, put your rods in. If you want to use the rods, obviously if you've got a fire going, there's a good chance it's going to come right out the top, so you probably won't need the adjustable rods. These are really only for different burners, as I showed you just now. Now, the other thing I can use it for is if I take a smaller bottle, say that big, as a backup cooker, then that will also drop inside there, no problem, and I can use it like a windshield. So that's the idea, that's what we're going to be building. For those of you that are interested, that's my sketches and my doodling. That gives me a good idea of where I'm going, and then obviously I've got a materials list there that give me an idea of what's required. So we're going to make it out of stainless steel, which has got some really good anti-corrosion properties, as most of you probably know. There's different grades of stainless, and what I'm going to be using is I've got some stainless sheet here which I'm going to cut the various sections out of. That's the plain side, and on the other side it's actually got a brushed type finish, so it will look quite smart once I've cut it with a plasma cutter. That'll be jobs a good one. It's 1.5 millimeters thick, and 1.5 mil. I'm sure someone's going to ask me what that is in old money, and I don't know. I will just quickly look it up now on the vernier here. 0.059 of an inch. 0.059 of an inch. So there we go. That's what we're using. So I'm going to mark it up, and I'm going to cut it with a plasma cutter. I'll chop in a little bit of footage of me doing that, and then I'll show you how I'm going to cut the slots. And I'm also going to have to mark out for the adjustable height for the rods. The triangular cutouts in the bottom are air holes to allow air in and up underneath the fire as an aid to combustion. So that's about it really for this this project. We're going to crack on with it, and hopefully it comes out all right. Catch you in a bit. Okay, so I've got the steel or aluminium ruler clamped down to the bench and down on top of the stainless. I don't want to use anything that is mild steel on stainless steel, because if you get any of it embedded in the stainless steel, of course mild steel will rust. So I'm using an aluminium ruler. I've put a fresh tip on the plasma cutter so that I'm not sort of burning any mild steel in that I've used on another project. The clamps that I've used, they're just quick clamps. They look like that. They're only cheap. They're from Lidl. Unfortunately, they are not the greatest in the world, and they do tend to break. So what I've had to do is remake the ends in steel. So I've remade them. They look just like the originals, but they are now steel. So that's what we've done there. Okay. So we're going to fire up the plasma cutter, we're going to cut that one off, and then we're going to divide that into our 6x6 squares. There we have one 6x6 stainless square. Only a few more to do. Okay, so I've got the 4 squares cut, the 4 6x6 inch squares cut there, and I've also got 2 others which are 12x6. So if I want to extend the firebox along, I can. So what we're going to do, all I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut the slits in the steel to replicate it as I had it on the template, and the slits will allow them to slot together. So I've got 4 pieces sandwiched together there. Obviously I'm going to take these clamps off and move them into the centre so I can actually get the cutting disc in. Move that one into there and do it up and get rid of this one altogether. And we're just going to use a normal angle grinder. Ideally you want the thickness of the blade to be the thickness of the slot. You don't want to have to be going in twice. You want to do it in one cut and be done with it, and that's it. So I'm going to fire up the grinder, cut the slots, and we'll be back. And there we go. That's the basic firebox done. Well, it's a box. It's a firebox. It's a, what else can you say? Needs a little bit of fine fettling with a fine file and a bit of fine grade sandpaper, just over the edges and through the slits, because you get little bits of swarf and bits of metal and pieces, and it makes it a bit difficult to slide, but it slides pretty easily. I've been through and made sure the slots are perfectly wide enough, and that's the first stage done, really. That's the firebox. So what we're going to do now, you might remember when I first showed you that I had some of this welding rod, and all I've done is cut it to length, folded the end over, and that's going to be one of the rods that goes through. Paul Daniels, I could put that through there. That's going to be one of the rods that goes through, but we're not using this is one, I can't remember what it is now. Yeah, this is 1.6mm rod, but we're going to be using some 2.4 TIG welding rod, and that over that distance there, that from sort of here to here, that'll be plenty strong enough to support anything you put on it that you're going to want to try and cook. And that isn't ever going to get hot enough to melt that. So it looks copper, but it's actually steel filler rod, that for TIG welding steel. So that's what we're going to be using for that. Next thing I need to do is mark out for the locations for those holes, which we shall do in accordance with our plan, and also cut in the sections at the bottom which allows the air in underneath the fire. And I've also still got to cut out a square for the base of the fire, if you like. Now that one on the prototype was a little bit small, although it's not too bad actually. In fact, I might just go with that for the base of the fire. So that's what we're going to do next. I'm going to cut that out and we're going to mark up for some holes. So we'll do that and we'll come back. Marked out, ready for drilling and cutting. The holes for the support rods are every inch up, so that gives a good amount of adjustment. The slot that's going to be cut out, the triangular piece at the bottom there, come in from there 2.5 inches, mark it, come in from there 2.5 inches, mark it, and then that central line is 3 inches in from any end because it's 6x6. So that's the marking out. We've centre dot each of those, and I will cut that out. Then I'll clamp that one to the other one, because obviously you need one on each end, and I will drill them together to make sure that the holes line up. Now the rod that I'm using is 2.4mm. Now I haven't got any small drills left that are that small, so I need to go and get another drill before, or a drill bit rather, before I can continue with the drilling and stuff. So I'll have to pop it on the back burner and carry on with it at the weekend. We'll catch you back shortly. So I went ahead and I've drilled out a series of holes on this plate. As I mentioned before, I clamped this one to the other side, and that also has its holes in for the adjustment. This is the rod I'm going to be using. It's 2.4mm steel TIG welding rod, and you simply just pop that in a hole, line it up with the corresponding hole on the other side, and that's just, don't tip it over, but that's, you get the idea. Now I've also gone ahead and made the insert plate. So if I'm using it as a firebox and not for, say, a burner, then you need a bottom in it, because the whole point is that we go to places where you can't really have a fire, you don't want to leave a mess on the ground, so the idea is to have a contained fire. So basically all you got to do is chuck the rods in on their lowest setting, like this, and I've made this ever so slightly smaller so it can just be dropped in. Just drop it in like that, and there's, just don't go tipping it up when it's got a fire in it. Let me just get that back in the old there we go. If I tip it that way, they won't fall out. So there you go, there's the base in the firebox, and those two rods there will support it nicely. As I say, it drops in there quite easily. Now, one of the advantages of the firebox is a multitude of burners, or you can have a fire in there, or you could use it as a heat shield for a gas burner if you wanted to. And when you're done, obviously, once it's cool, you simply take the rods out, drop the base out, and then you just take it apart, and the whole kit folds down to that. So we're pretty much there, actually. I've still got to do the extended sides. I've got those cut out already. That's basically just going to make the firebox longer, so I can have two pots or two different meals, or one for water, one for food. But we're pretty much there. Now I have got some mesh to go on the top, but I'm not happy with it, so I may well come up with a different idea, and that'll just enable me to cook food over an open fire directly on the mesh. Not that I'm really not too keen on that. The Western style of barbecue, where things are charred on the outside and a little bit pink on the middle, is not really appealing to me. So that's not really a necessary part. So what I'll do is I shall finish everything off. I shall give it a nice clean and a nice sand off to give it a nice finish. It's going to get, you know, tarnished and dirty and stuff in the field, but just give it a nice clean up. Take off all any sharp corners. I have actually already rounded and deburred all the slots, as you can see, with all the cross hatching. So I've got some wet and dry. I'm going to give it a nice clean with some wet and dry, and we'll be good to go. Now obviously it wants to go in some kind of pouch. I'm sure I can find one. My sewing skills are far from perfect, so maybe some sort of Cordura. I think it's called Cordura. Is it Cordura? Cordura, something like that kind of pouch, or maybe an old pair of army trousers or something, cut them up and make a pouch. But we'll get it all cleaned up, and next time we come back, it'll all be up and running. Catch you back in a bit. Right, we've got the lights off at the moment just to show you the kind of flame you expect to get. That's a Tarangia burner in there at the moment. I've put a bit of mesh on the top of there. That probably won't be the mesh that it stays with, but we shall see. And very stable. If I just turn the lights back on. There we go. So we'll freehand the camera and see if we can do some shots around. Put it out of the thing. There we go. There we go, coming up to boil, and it's just on its, there's the Tarangia burner in there, and yeah, very secure. Obviously those holes are not in use at the moment, but we'll get a wood fire in there at the moment, in a moment, sorry, but sorted. So in true British style, just about to go outside and do the bits of tree or wood burning fire element of the video, and it's tipping down with rain. So we've just fired it up with some bits of wood that I got in the scrap bin from inside the workshop, which is not ideal, but I will open the door in a second and let all the smoke out. But yeah, so we're just using the metal sheet that I put all the holes in. The two support rods are on the lowest setting, and as you can see, it will work an absolute peach. We put the mesh on, which just sits on top. As I say, this is just for making sure it all works, but it does fit on there nicely. And we just put the cap on, and yeah, should do the biz. Now, one thing I've noticed is, obviously, once it's going and I'm cooking, I've got no way of feeding the fire. So what I may well do is, in one of the sides, just make a slot, like a square slot, so that I can feed the fire whilst it's going. But other than that, I'm pretty pleased with the way that's turned out. Very pleased indeed. And it also puts a hell of a lot of heat in the workshop at the moment, so we're not going to be able to put it out. So what I'll do is get my big gloves on and stick her on outside. But there we go, the Firebox project done.